You, a waitress? Billionaire laughed at Waitress' proposal. Years later, he begged for her forgiveness. What if the most painful rejection of your life became the greatest blessing you never saw coming? Lily Chen wiped down the sticky counter at Murphy's Diner for the 100th time that evening, her engagement ring catching the harsh fluorescent light. The small diamond wasn't much, but it represented everything she'd dreamed of since childhood. At 34, she'd finally found someone who made her believe in forever. Her boyfriend Jake had been acting strange lately, whispering phone calls and mysterious meetings, but tonight was different. Tonight, she was going to ask him the question that had been burning in her heart for months. The dinner rush was winding down, and through the rain-streaked windows, she could see expensive cars pulling up to the valet stand across the street. That's when she spotted him. The man who would change everything. "Where are you watching from tonight?" Alexander Hartwell stepped out of his black Mercedes, adjusting his Italian suit as rain misted his perfectly styled hair. At 42, he'd built an empire worth $3 billion, but tonight felt different. The tech mogul had just closed the biggest deal of his career, acquiring a chain of sustainable energy companies that would reshape his legacy. His assistant had booked him a table at Le Bernardin, but something about the warm glow of Murphy's Diner across the street called to him. Inside the diner, Lily's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee for table 6. She'd been working double shifts for 3 months, saving every penny for the wedding she hoped Jake would say yes to. Her mother had raised her to believe that love was about taking chances, about being brave enough to ask for what your heart wanted. Tonight, after her shift ended, she planned to drive to Jake's apartment and propose. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked the elderly couple at the corner booth, her voice carrying the warmth that regulars had come to love about Murphy's. Mrs. Patterson smiled and shook her head, leaving an extra $5 tip like she did every Tuesday. These small kindnesses kept Lily going through the hardest days. The bell above the door chimed, and Lily looked up to see Alexander scanning the room with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to owning everything he surveyed. He chose a booth near the window, his fingers already dancing across his phone screen. She approached with a menu and a smile that had weathered countless difficult customers. "Welcome to Murphy's. What can I start you with tonight?" Alexander barely glanced up. "Coffee, black, and whatever passes for food in a place like this." His tone carried the dismissive edge of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be humble. Lily's smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. She'd served plenty of wealthy customers who wandered in from the business district, most of them treating her like furniture. But something about this man's arrogance felt different, sharper. As she walked away to get his coffee, she had no idea that their lives were about to become forever intertwined in ways neither could imagine. The dinner crowd thinned as Alexander nursed his 3rd cup of coffee, occasionally glancing at Lily as she moved between tables with practiced efficiency. Despite his initial rudeness, he found himself oddly fascinated by her genuine interactions with customers. She remembered names, asked about grandchildren, and somehow made a rundown diner feel like a community gathering place. "More coffee?" Lily asked, appearing beside his table with the pot in hand. This time, Alexander looked up properly. Her face held an openness he rarely encountered in his world of boardrooms and bottom lines. "You've been working here long?" 4 years, she said, refilling his cup. "It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills while I figure out my next chapter." She paused, then added with a shy smile, "Actually, I'm hoping that chapter starts tonight." Something in her voice made Alexander curious despite himself. "Job interview?" Lily laughed, a sound that was equal parts nervous and hopeful. "Something like that. I'm going to ask my boyfriend to marry me." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, and her cheeks flushed pink. Alexander's eyebrows shot up. "You're proposing to him?" The disbelief in his voice was unmistakable. "Why not?" Lily straightened, defensive now. "Love is love, right? If you know someone's your person, why wait for tradition?" The billionaire set down his coffee cup with a sharp clink. "Because that's not how the world works. Men like being the hunters, not the hunted. You're a waitress in a diner. What could you possibly offer someone worth proposing to?" The cruel words spilled out before he could consider their impact. Lily's face went white, then red. The coffee pot shook in her hands. "Excuse me?" "I'm just being realistic," Alexander continued, his voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd never been wrong about anything that mattered to him. "You think some guy is going to be impressed by a proposal from someone who serves coffee for a living?" Come on, the diner had gone quiet. Even the kitchen staff had stopped talking. Lily set the coffee pot down carefully, her movements deliberate and controlled. "You don't know anything about love, do you?" She whispered, "If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up, because what happened next would haunt Alexander Hartwell for years to come." Lily walked to the back of the diner, hung up her apron, and left through the rear exit, carrying his words like stones in her chest. Alexander sat alone in the suddenly oppressive silence of Murphy's diner, the weight of a dozen disapproving stares pressing down on him. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman from the corner booth, approached his table with surprising steadiness for her 83 years. "That girl works 3 jobs to take care of her sick father," she said quietly, her voice trembling with controlled anger. "She volunteers at the Children's Hospital on weekends, and she's the kindest soul you'll ever meet. You just broke something beautiful, young man." The words hit Alexander like a physical blow. He'd built his fortune by reading people, by understanding what motivated them, yet he'd completely misjudged the situation. The calculating businessman in him recognized a fatal error when he saw one. Meanwhile, Lily sat in her car in the diner's parking lot, tears streaming down her face. The engagement ring on her finger suddenly felt impossibly heavy. How could she propose to Jake when a complete stranger had just voiced every insecurity she'd been carrying? Maybe she wasn't enough. Maybe love wasn't enough. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Hey babe, can we talk when you get home? Got some news." The simple message filled her with dread. After what just happened, she wasn't sure she could handle any more surprises tonight. But she wiped her eyes, started the engine, and drove toward what she hoped might still be her future. At Jake's apartment, she found him pacing nervously, his usually confident demeanor replaced by something that looked almost like guilt. "Lily, we need to talk," he began, and her heart sank further. "I got the promotion," he said, but there was no joy in his voice. "The one in Chicago. They want me to start next month." Lily's breath caught. "Chicago. But we never talked about moving, and I can't leave Dad, not with his treatments." Jake ran his hands through his hair, avoiding her eyes. "That's just it. I've been thinking maybe this is a sign. Maybe we've been moving too fast. Maybe we should take a break while I get settled." The proposal ring in her pocket felt like a lead weight. The stranger's words echoed in her mind. What could she possibly offer someone worth proposing to? Have you ever faced something like this, where everything you believed about your future crumbled in a single evening? Let us know in the comments, because Lily's story was about to take a turn that would change everything. 5 years passed like pages turning in a book Alexander never wanted to write. The memory of that night at Murphy's diner had become a constant companion, a reminder of the person he'd been before life taught him about consequences. His empire had grown, but something fundamental had shifted inside him after Mrs. Patterson's words and Lily's broken expression. He'd tried to find her, returning to Murphy's diner the next day only to learn she'd quit that very night. The owner, a gruff man named Murphy himself, had simply said, "You did enough damage, son," and refused to say more. What Alexander didn't know was that Lily's life had taken an extraordinary turn. After Jake's departure to Chicago and their mutual agreement to part ways, she'd channeled her heartbreak into something powerful. Using her father's small inheritance after he passed peacefully 2 years later, she'd opened a food truck specializing in comfort meals for hospital workers and students. Her business, Lily's Kitchen, had grown into 3 trucks and a small cafe, employing a dozen people and serving thousands of meals to those who needed both nourishment and kindness. Hospital, where Alexander was visiting his assistant's newborn daughter. He'd changed in subtle but profound ways. His suits were still expensive, but his demeanor had softened. Therapy had helped him understand the pain and loneliness that had made him so cruel to a stranger who'd simply been sharing her joy. He was walking through the lobby when he saw her. Lily stood behind a food cart, wearing a bright apron with Lily's Kitchen embroidered across the front, serving soup to tired nurses and worried families. Her hair was shorter now. Laugh lines had appeared around her eyes, and she moved with the confident grace of someone who'd found her purpose. Their eyes met across the bustling lobby, and time seemed to freeze. Alexander felt his chest tighten with a mixture of recognition, regret, and something that might have been hope. Lily's expression cycled through surprise, memory, and finally, a cautious curiosity. He approached slowly, like someone trying not to spook a wild animal. When he reached her cart, he said simply, "I've been looking for you for 5 years." Lily studied his face, seeing something different there, a humility that hadn't existed before. "To apologize," she said, not making it a question. "To become someone worthy of asking for your forgiveness," he replied. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales, because what happened next would surprise them both. The conversation that followed lasted 3 hours, long after Lily had closed her cart and the hospital lobby had emptied of its dinner crowd. They sat in the small chapel, talking with the careful honesty of two people who'd been changed by pain and time. Alexander told her about the sleepless nights, the way her words about love had haunted him through every subsequent relationship. He'd dated women who shared his wealth and status, but none who possessed her genuine warmth. He'd started a foundation providing microloans to service industry workers pursuing dreams, a direct result of that night's shame. Lily shared her journey too, the heartbreak of Jake's departure, her father's peaceful passing, and the unexpected joy she'd found in feeding people during their most vulnerable moments. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said, a small smile playing at her lips. "You were partially right that night." Alexander's face fell, but she continued. "I wasn't enough for Jake, but not because I was a waitress, because I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I was so focused on the fairy tale that I forgot to build a life I actually loved." "And now?" he asked quietly. "Now I know what I'm worth," she said simply. "I employ 12 people, serve thousands of meals a month, and make a difference every single day. That stranger who hurt me 5 years ago actually gave me a gift. He made me stop asking for someone else's approval and start building something beautiful. Instead, Alexander felt tears he hadn't shed in decades threatening to surface. I was so wrong about everything." "Yes, you were," Lily agreed, but her voice held no malice. "But people change. I can see it in you." They exchanged numbers that night, not as potential lovers, but as two souls who'd found unexpected redemption in each other's stories. Over the following months, they became friends, then business partners when Alexander invested in Lily's expansion plans, and finally, something deeper. Their wedding 2 years later was held at Murphy's Diner, which Lily had purchased and renovated into a community center. Mrs. Patterson, now 88, walked Lily down the aisle, beaming with pride at the young woman who'd turned her greatest pain into her greatest strength. During his wedding toast, Alexander said, "5 years ago, I thought success meant never being wrong. Lily taught me that real success means being brave enough to admit when you are wrong, and humble enough to become better." As the evening wound down, Lily and Alexander stood hand in hand outside the place where their story began, watching the rain create patterns on the windows just like that night long ago. But this time, the story ended with love, forgiveness, and the beautiful truth that sometimes our greatest mistakes become the doorways to our greatest blessings. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of redemption and love.